Okay.
All right. Of course, there's a lot that has been going on around the world. We know what has been happening between Ukraine and Russia, and that effect has been felt down here at home. And to help us understand and give us a perspective, especially how it informs the decisions that are made locally and how it has affected our economy, is Derek Chollet. He is an American foreign policy advisor and also an author currently serving as a counselor of the United States Department of State. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Of course, the best place to begin this discussion is the notion that what's happening in Ukraine and Russia translates to what's happening locally, and that's the reason why, for example, fuel and fertilizer prices are expensive. Would you say it contributes to this, or it's just a notion?
There's no question that Russia's unprovoked war against Ukraine is not just a challenge for Ukraine or challenge for Europe. It's a global crisis. And it's a global crisis because of the implications of that war across the world, whether that's in rising fuel prices or rising food prices, because, of course, Ukraine in many ways was a breadbasket for the rest of the world, not just around Europe, but in throughout North Africa, throughout all of Africa, even here in the United States. So the entire world is feeling the effects of Putin's decision to launch this completely unjustified invasion against Ukraine, and we are all feeling the effects of that.
All right, the effects might be felt all over the world, but tell me, how much effect do you think people down Africa, especially, let me give an example of Kenya, are feeling from this crisis?
Oh, I think everyone's feeling it, particularly in the rising food prices and rising fuel prices. And that's something that the United States and many of our allies are very, very focused on. I was just with the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, yesterday in Brussels for meetings at NATO, but we also met with the G7 foreign ministers, and the issue of food security and the challenges particularly folks in Africa and Kenya are facing when it comes to food shortages or just rising prices was something that G7 countries are very focused on. And the G7 ministers discussed ways that over time we can do more to help provide support for those who are feeling the effects of this war, particularly when it comes to food and fuel. For example, by ensuring that we have enough fertilizer to be able to plant crops for next year, that we have enough wheat that can stay on the market. In the United States and Canada are working on an initiative to ensure that there's enough wheat for the rest of the world. And then finally, to ensure that the UN agencies, the World Food Program in particular, has the financial support necessary to deal with this acute crisis that is created entirely by Putin's decision to invade Ukraine.
All right, I'll talk about aid in a little bit, but tell me, there are several sanctions that have been imposed on Russia and the oligarchs. How much effect has this done to bring down the war that is going on? Or the other day, President Biden also said that even if it's possible that it be excluded from the G20, that's a direction that the U.S. could likely go. But how important do you think these sanctions have aided in perhaps informing his decision even to withdraw from parts of Ukraine?
Well, the sanctions have been devastating to the Russian economy. The financial sanctions have made it hard for anyone to do business with Russia, and they've had a meaningful effect on Russia's economy. Our projection is that Russia's economy will shrink by 15% this year. Secondly, what we have seen is the exit of hundreds of prominent companies from Russia, major corporations, businesses from the United States and all around the world that have decided that it is not worth the effort to do business in Russia, and in fact, it's a losing proposition, and that's going to have a difficult impact on the Russian economy. And then third and finally, there are export controls on Russia, which is going to make it harder for Russia to import the kinds of technologies they need to continue to innovate and grow their economy. So the cumulative effects of these measures are having an immediate impact on Russia's economy, but we also believe over time will have the impact of sending a clear message to Russia's leadership and, in fact, the Russian people that Putin's decision to invade Ukraine was the wrong decision and that he needs to pay a very high cost for that decision. Now, on the G20, you mentioned that President Biden has been very clear that in the United States' view, it does not make sense for Vladimir Putin to attend the G20 meetings later this year in Indonesia. Now, this is not the United States' decision to make alone. Other G20 member states would need to be part of that. President Biden said if the decision were taken for President Putin to attend those meetings, at the very least, we should also invite Ukrainian President Zelensky to also attend those meetings, so we can hear from him as well.
All right. And finally, a lot of countries are looking up to the United States, for example, as the big brother and looking for solutions. In your mind, what is the best, what is the nearest solution to this? And the small countries, the countries down Africa, who are looking up to the United States as the big brother for a solution. What would this solution be?
Well, what the United States is trying to do to solve this problem, I want to be very clear here, those who are really on the front lines trying to solve this are the Ukrainian people, and they have shown incredible bravery and resilience over the last 6 weeks during this war. We're doing everything we can to support the people of Ukraine, to help them with their humanitarian needs, their economic support that they desperately need, as well as with assistance to their military. And the United States and 30 other countries around the world are providing significant amount of military assistance to the Ukrainian military. The United States, working with our partners and allies around the world, are also finding ways to show that the international community is speaking with one voice on this issue. And Kenya, for example, voted twice in the UN General Assembly in support of resolutions to condemn Russia's actions and to condemn, in particular, its actions that have exacerbated the humanitarian situation. Just yesterday, the United Nations voted, the countries of the United Nations voted to remove Russia from the UN Human Rights Council, which was a very important step, only the second time in the Human Rights Council's history that has taken place. So when it comes to solving Ukraine, and I want to be very clear, this is really the Ukrainian people who we need to support and find every way possible to give them what they need to push back against Russia's aggression. And then once this war is over, we're going to need to help Ukraine rebuild. Rebuild.
Okay, very important. And as I let you go, just a final question. Agriculture is very important. Fuel is very important to run this small economy. So whoever is wondering that could the United States, for example, step in to ease in that burden that is being experienced, especially in these small countries, would there be a way that the United States would be thinking to intervene in terms of even finding solutions, making it cheaper for fuel and fertilizer to get to these small countries, or that is a little bit far-fetched as at now?
No, absolutely. As I said earlier, we are committed to doing what we can to try to mitigate some of the effects of, particularly on fuel prices as well as on food prices and food availability that is a result of Putin's war against Ukraine, whether that's ensuring that we can produce enough fertilizer for folks to be able to plant crops, that we can ensure that there's enough wheat on the market, to ensure that we can have access to wheat from all around the world, but then also ensuring that UN agencies and other organizations whose mission it is to help address food needs have the funding and support that they need.